What happens when a collapsing pregnant lioness meets a lone man with no weapons, no backup, and no intention of walking away? One act of defiance against a broken system changes everything in the most unexpected way. You ever see something so wrong it punches you in the gut before your brain even catches up? That was me. 3 minutes after nearly losing a tire on a rock the size of a watermelon, riding through the middle of Tanzanian nowhere on a busted government-issued dirt bike that smelled like burning rubber and failure. I didn't come here for a vacation. I'm a wildlife vet. Name's John Brady, 42, and no, I don't pet the animals. I patch them up so they can get back out there and try not to die again. This gig, halfway across the world from my dry backyard in Arizona, was supposed to be part of a conservation project. You know, something meaningful. Instead, I was documenting death traps, literal steel snares left by poachers who treat wild animals like walking trophies. So here I was, sweaty, mad, and running on fumes when I saw her. She was lying there in the heat haze, about 20 feet from where I skidded to a stop. A lioness, and not just any lioness. Pregnant. Her ribs stuck out like broken piano keys, and her eyes looked like they had already given up, but her body hadn't caught on yet. Now, most people would have backed away. You don't walk up to a lioness unless you've got a death wish or a tranquilizer gun, and guess what? I had neither, but she wasn't growling, wasn't baring her teeth. She wasn't even really looking at me. She was just breathing, slow and shallow, like every exhale took a vote on whether to give up or keep going. I took a cautious step forward. One step. No reaction. Another. Still nothing. That's when I saw her sides moving. Not just with breath, but movement. She wasn't just pregnant. She was very pregnant. That kind of pregnant where you don't get a second chance if things go wrong. And something was already going wrong. I dropped to one knee, slowly, like I was proposing to death itself. My brain screamed at me to back off, but the part of me that had seen too many dying animals said otherwise. This lioness was done running. Whatever she'd escaped from, and trust me, something had chased her out, had taken everything she had left. I looked around. Not a soul in sight. Just me, her, and a sun that wanted to fry us both alive. The radio in my backpack was busted. My satellite phone, dead as my last pay raise. Help wasn't coming. The worst part? I wasn't even surprised. This is the kind of mess you get when the system is too busy writing reports to actually do anything. Conservation? Sure, sounds good in a TED Talk, but when boots hit dirt and lions hit the ground, no one's around. Just a lone vet with a useless bike and a lioness on the brink of collapse. I could hear the vultures. Literally. They were circling above like they had reservations. And I swear, one of them looked impatient. I sat down cross-legged, slowly, like I was negotiating with gravity. I wasn't going to move her. She was too weak. I wasn't going to touch her either. Not yet. But I was going to stay. That I could do. Just be a human being for once in a world that had stopped acting like one. And as I sat there, drenched in sweat, watching this fierce, broken queen of the wild try to keep breathing, one truth burned through my chest like fire. She didn't deserve this, and I wasn't about to walk away. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this story unfolds, especially when things go from bad to unbelievable. Ever sit there and realize you're the only one who gives a damn? That was me. Still cross-legged in the dust, squinting at a half-conscious lioness whose body had all but waved the white flag. The sun didn't let up, neither did the flies, and guess who else didn't show up? Anyone. From anywhere. I wasn't even expecting a miracle. I would have settled for a working radio, or some ranger who hadn't clocked out early. But no, just me, a dying lioness, and buzzards acting like the buffet was about to open. Time passed, slow, like molasses in January. Her breathing grew shallower. Then suddenly, she jerked. Not violently, but just enough to snap my spine straight. Something was wrong. Something inside her. I've delivered calves and patched up cheetahs with broken legs, but I could see this wasn't normal labor. My instincts screamed it. If I didn't act now, she'd die. And not quietly. So I did what any underfunded, overworked, and morally exhausted field vet would do. I reached for the one thing left in my bag that still worked. My hands. Now, before you picture something out of a nature documentary with soft music and perfect lighting, stop. This was chaos. The ground was hot enough to fry an egg. I had no surgical tools, no assistance, no sedation. Just me and raw adrenaline. I inched closer, whispering to her like an idiot. "You've got this, girl. Stay with me." As if words could hold her together. She didn't snap. She didn't move. Just trembled. I placed my hand gently on her flank. Wet, too wet. Blood, and too much of it. This wasn't a regular delivery. The cub was breached. I'd seen it in cows, once in a zebra, never in a lion, but the look on her face, dazed, silent agony, told me everything. She couldn't fix this on her own, and no one else was coming. You ever try to reposition a lion cub from the outside without being turned into mulch? I don't recommend it. Every part of me expected her to lash out. Break my arm, bite my face, you name it. But she didn't, she let me in. Not literally. Not yet. But in that strange way animals sometimes do when they realize you're their only shot. That's when the real kicker landed. A truck engine. In the distance. Finally, I thought, maybe it was backup. Maybe the Rangers got my earlier distress ping. Maybe, just maybe, this story wasn't going to end with me buried under regret. Wrong. The vehicle that pulled up belonged to a local cattle farmer, and not the friendly kind. This guy had history with wildlife, and let's just say it wasn't a let's coexist kind of attitude. He stepped out, chewing on something like it owed him money, and took one look at the lioness. You should step away, he said, nodding at her like she was roadkill. She's dangerous, needs to be put down. I stood up. She's giving birth. He shrugged. Not my problem. My goats graze here. Lions bring more lions. You want her? Take her home. Every word dripped with that smug confidence you only get from people who've never cared about anything they couldn't sell. I didn't yell. I didn't curse. But I looked him dead in the eye and said, if you touch her, I swear I'll make sure the world sees what you are. He scoffed, climbed back into his truck, and drove off, slow enough to show he wasn't in a rush, fast enough to prove he didn't care. Dust in the air, diesel in my lungs, anger in my chest. And right then, I understood. This wasn't just about one lioness. This was a system. People like him, loopholes big enough to drive trucks through, and red tape so thick you could strangle on it. But I wasn't giving up. Not on her. Not today. We're on the edge now. What happens next flips everything upside down. The climax is coming, and trust me, you don't want to miss what this lioness does when the tables turn. I'd seen a lot in this line of work. Broken bones, traps buried in tall grass, mothers crying over lifeless cubs. But nothing compared to the moment this lioness, barely conscious, bleeding, and abandoned by every system meant to protect her, did something no textbook ever prepared me for. She shifted, not much, just enough for me to see the cub's paw, half-born, twisted at an angle that made my stomach tighten. Her body tensed. She was trying, fighting, not for herself, not anymore. For them. I had seconds, maybe less. I slid closer and reached again, steady, careful. My fingers guided the tiny limb, easing the pressure, rotating it gently until I felt the cub slip. Just enough. I didn't breathe. Not because I was scared of her, though I should have been, but because I knew one wrong move and this cub wouldn't make it. And then, a sudden shift. Her muscles contracted hard. One final time, and in a rush of blood and dust, the cub was out. Still. No sound. No movement. I froze. Time stopped. All I could hear was the buzz of flies and my own pulse pounding in my ears. I rubbed the cub's chest. Nothing. Tilted its head. Blew a breath. Then, the smallest gasp. A tiny wheezing squeak that sounded more like a protest than a cry. But it was enough. It was alive. The lioness opened one eye, barely. Her gaze met mine. Not wild, not fearful, but something quieter. Something that felt like trust. And then, she closed it again. As if to say, you've got this now. But we weren't out of the woods. Not even close. Within an hour, the sky started to darken. Not with night, but smoke. Fire. A grass fire, likely set off by illegal burners clearing land nearby. It moved fast, low to the ground, eating everything in its path. And guess where the wind was blowing? Straight toward us. My mouth went dry. I had a lioness too weak to walk, a newborn cub, no transport, and 40 pounds of survival gear that couldn't get us 5 feet off the ground. I scanned the horizon, nothing but open savanna and one tiny hill about half a mile out. If we could make it there, we might stand a chance. I built a makeshift sling using my torn pack and carefully placed the cub inside. Then, and I still don't know how, I coaxed the lioness up. She stood. Shaky, slow, but she stood. Her body screamed collapse, but her instinct said move. And she did. Step by step, like a ghost pushing through hell, she followed me toward that hill. The fire snapped behind us. Birds screamed overhead, smoke clawed at my throat, but we didn't stop. Not when the heat bit at our heels. Not when ash burned our skin. We climbed that hill together. Me, the lioness, and the cub she nearly died bringing into the world. And on the other side, a miracle, an outpost. Abandoned, yes, but with one working satellite beacon and enough clean water to keep her breathing through the night. The next morning, rescue arrived. Real rescue. Park officials, field medics, media crews, all showing up like this was some kind of grand event. Too late to help, but right on time for a headline. They took the lioness to a rehab center. The cub survived. Barely. And me? I went back to work. Angry, proud, tired. Mostly tired, but the system didn't get the last word this time. That lioness, against every odd, did what entire institutions failed to do. She fought. She survived. And she trusted a stranger when it mattered most. Sometimes it's not about fixing the whole world. Sometimes it's about showing up when no one else will.